Everyone, my name is Pawan and I welcome you all towards my YouTube channel. So guys, today in this video, we are going to focus on 2nd PUC English, chapter 11, and that is on Japan and Brazil through a traveler's eye. So in this video, we'll be covering up all the important one markers question, which you can normally expect for your board exam. And all the questions, whichever I'm going to post over here, it's basically from the previous 10 years question papers. I've collected all the questions. As such, I just thought it could help you a lot with your preparation. Guys, I've also updated the chapters of from chapter 1 to chapter 10 of all the important chapters whichever are part of your syllabus of one markers. You can find it even in my playlist. So even have a look on that. As such, it can help you a lot with your preparation. So a small tip is that while you're preparing for one markers, prepare it along with your 4 markers and 6 markers. As such, it can help you a lot with your preparation. So as being said that, let's get started now. Starting with the first question, who are the drivers in Brazil on the lookout for? And as you all know that Brazil, the drivers are mainly looking out for the pedestrians. So while you're writing the answer, you can write it as the drivers in Brazil are on the lookout for the pedestrians. Your second question is, what according to George Mickes is a sign of appreciation when eating soup in Japan? So the answer is making a fearful noise. So in Japan, they have a culture. If you make a fearful noise while drinking the soup, it is assumed that there is an appreciation for the person who have just made the soup. So we can see that it's a different form of culture which has been evolved in Japan. So while you're writing the answer, you can write it as making a fearful noise is a sign of appreciation when eating the soup in Japan. So looking on to your third question, whose life is becoming more hazardous in Brazil every day according to George Mickes? So according to George Mickes, whose life is becoming very hazardous, and it is the life of the pedestrians. So a pedestrian's life is becoming much more hazardous every day. Your fourth question is, whom according to George Mickes do the Japanese stores employ? And the answer is, according to the George Mickes, the Japanese stores employ the bowing girls because it is founded as a profession and bowing is very infectious. As we have read this chapter, you can understand that bowing is very infectious. As such, we can also understand that even in the stores they employ these bowing girls. Let's look upon to the fifth question, that is, what according to George Mickes do the driver and pedestrian finally do after the chase in Brazil? So the answer is smile amicably at each other, because there's a sense of happiness as well as there's a sense of friendshipness which is lying that I win today and you will win tomorrow. So the sixth question is, whom do the Japanese stores employ? I've repeated the same question because it was one of the repetitive questions in the question papers. So the answer is they employ bowing girls to bow everyone. And the seventh question is, what is called a man's castle in Japan according to Mickes? And the answer is the telephone receiver. The telephone receiver is a man's castle in Japan according to Mickes. So the telephone conversation, whichever, if you observe carefully in Japan, nobody interrupts or nobody is having a keen observations or an interest to listen to the conversation. So that's the reason we tell it as the telephone's receiver is a man's castle in Japan according to Mickes. So the eighth question is, name the animal that bowed George Mickes in Japan in Nara. So the answer is deer. So there was an animal, deer, which bowed to George Mickes in the place of Nara. So that's what covering up the first set of 8 questions. Now let's discuss about the 9th question, which clearly says about whose life is becoming more hazardous in Brazil every day. So it's a pedestrian's life is becoming more hazardous in Brazil every day. The second question is, what are extremely expensive in Brazil? And the motor cars are very much extremely expensive in Brazil. The 11th question is, why do Japanese make a fearful noise while eating the soup? As I've explained before, it is basically to appreciate the soup. And the 12th question is, how are the pavements decorated in the streets of Copacabana in Brazil? So in the street of Copacabana in Brazil, the pavements are completely decorated with black mosaics. So these are very important questions. The 12th one is little more important, so kindly give little more focusing to that particular name of black mosaics plus Copacabana. They can ask properly for 1 markers, even the Copacabana one, so kindly give little more focus to that. 13th question says that who are exquisitely well-mannered people? And the answer is Japanese. And the 14th question is, what is the mania the Japanese have? And the mania which Japanese have is bowing, because it is very much infectious in Japan. So now that's all for today, guys. We have completed overall 14 important questions from this particular chapter. However, in the description box, I'll also be putting a link of the KSEB solutions of this particular chapter. You can also have a little more clear picture understanding on further 1 markers of this particular chapter. However, as I said earlier, just having a contextual knowledge of 4 markers and 6 markers with the basic notes which I've given you, that's more than enough. If you want any kind of external preparation, only then you guys can go up with the KSEB solution. That can also be a better medium, but don't dive more into it, because you must not lose out time of spending these preparation for other kind of questions. So guys, that's all for today. If you do like this video, please do like it, share it and subscribe. Have a good day.